Welcome. This movie recap is of the first 2 episodes of the series The Last Man on Earth, in which a man remains completely alone on the whole planet. He can do whatever he wants there. In 2020 on Earth, exactly a year has passed since the beginning of the pandemic of an unknown virus that destroyed all of humanity. The main character, Phil, is perhaps the only person left on Earth for a whole year without people. He decided to find at least someone, and traveled all over the states, but he never met anyone. He decides to stay in the desert, having written about it on a billboard, and since there is no one else, he chooses a bigger house for himself. He takes museums and moves paintings to his home. A sarcophagus, even 2 Oscar statuettes. Everything now belongs to philosophy. At night, he is in the pajamas, and he was feeling so lonely. He was also thinking about Noda. He turned to God and asks only for one girl. In the morning, he, a little softened, decides to go to the store and makes his dream come true by buying everything he wants. He fills the cart with everything he wants and, most importantly, with films for adults. In the evening, he again talks to God and requested a bottle of wine of $10,000 so he can enjoy his own company. The next day also begins with entertainment. On this day, once Phil plays bowling with everyone that beats cool and ends up bowling from a Masha. In the evening, in his cinema, he watches Outcast and laughs at the fact that the main character talks with a sword out of loneliness, which reminds him of himself. On his birthday, Phil remembers how he spent time with his family and then gets angry at God because he did not fulfill his request and did not give a single girl at all. A year has passed since that moment, and we see that Phil has completely neglected himself. The house has turned into a dump. It has become uninteresting to do all those nonsense things. Phil continues to do it so much because that there is nothing else to do. In this empty world, he makes himself bath from alcohol and continues to exist. Having filled the toilet with garbage, he decides not to take a steam bath and makes a toilet from the pool. During the day, Phil comes to the bar where his friends are waiting for him, a whole bunch of swords with faces. He talks to them and drinks alcohol all day long. Phil takes his friends to a girl he really likes. Harry tries to force him to talk to her, but Phil is shy after all. Having made up his mind, he meets a brunette and even kisses at the first meeting, but accidentally tears off his hand. He comes to his senses and gets very upset. After some time, Phil makes a gravestone and decides to crash into the rock at full speed. He says goodbye to his friends and gets into the car. Having accelerated well, Phil stops at the very stone, noticing something in the distance. It turns out to be smoke, and he passionately drives there. After arriving at the place, he finds a tent and a fire. But most importantly, women's underwear is hung up, and he is partly beside himself and hears her standing behind her. After watching her, Phil faints. Phil comes to his senses and sees a beautiful girl who says that she saw the sign. They are glad that they met and immediately kiss, but it turns out to be a dream and the girl is replaced by a woman. They argue a little about his wet pants, and then she pulls out a gun because Phil is holding her and his underwear. She asks if he is a good person. Phil assures him that he is, and apologizes to her for scaring Carol. He begins to tell everything about himself and talks non-stop. Phil realizes what he have got, not that the girl of her dreams. Phil decides to show her his house along the way. She is indignant that they do not follow the rules of the road. He tries to explain to her that there is no point in following them, but she insists on her first thing. He shows her his toilet pool and then the pride pool with Margarita in the house. She condemns him for the fact that Phil stole the paintings and insults him by calling him an animal for what he did in the house. Phil does not accept such an attitude towards himself and takes her back to the camp. In the morning, he gets up and sees that she is cleaning his house. She forces him to postpone his important affairs and the construction of a Jenga tower. Together, they go to the store. Carol asks Phil to park at the right side because he took a place for the disabled and again order him to park according to rules. Phil complained to friends that what he received from God is not what he wanted. This woman is not what he had need. Carol decides to move to the next house, which Phil really doesn't like. Carol herself starts talking about reviving the population. It's strange, but even Phil is against this idea. Even on the toilet, she finds Phil and brains him out. She tries to get through to him and comes up with trump cards. She grew up there from attacks that Phil hasn't eaten vegetables for 2 years. For Phil, it's a good motivation to help her with the garden, but he refuses. After that at night, he brazenly eats her and tomatoes. Carol completely despairs of the fillet and she can't get her life back on track, so she, like Phil, goes into all the troubles. Phil feels sorry for the neighbor and for her sake, he decides to install water. With varying degrees of success, he manages to do it and also he arranges watering of the tomatoes. For this, she invites him to dinner at Rosh's. Phil believes that God wants them to continue their mouths, and Phil says that he's tired of working anyway with his hand. They need to head closer. He says that he needs to wash himself, he will be back in 5 minutes and they can start, but Carol says that this will not happen until they get married. He starts to get angry and calls her crazy, but after breaking through the door, he returns and proposes to her. Carol agrees and Phil goes home and gets ready for the wedding. This is where the first 2 episodes of the series end. Write your comments below that what will happen next. Will Phil and Carol will get married? This recap was wonderful, but there are more fabulous on your right. Hit the like button and subscribe.